1 year later. Hey guys, what's up? It's BigJackFilms here, and welcome to another live stream. And you've heard it right. It is 1 year since I released my remake of King Kong on YouTube back on December 17th, 2016. And to celebrate the occasion, I figured I'd do a little Q&A on some of the stuff on the making of the film and what it went through to make the film. So if you guys have any questions about the film or want to know anything about the making of it, yeah, let me know in the comments and I'll read from the messages. Before we get started though, yes, TJP123, I'm Moan King, Ethan Doyle, Screaming Joker Productions. Glad to have you guys all here. But anyway, so before we get started, I just want to let you guys know some of the updates of what's been happening. If you guys are wondering where the season finale is, it's coming. It's going to be coming in either on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, or New Year's Eve. The plan is for me to I have a few more shots I have to finish, and it should be up as soon as possible. So it's pretty much finished. You just gotta wait for a few more shots to get it all finished up and ready to go. So that's what's happening with the season finale. If you're wondering about the growth of beard here, that is for the start of season 4. I won't say what happens, but I do at some point my character grows out a bit, so you'll be seeing that down the line. So that's why I haven't shaved in a couple days. And also, we are currently writing the start of season 4. We're going to start production in January and February, and hopefully have the first few videos out by March. So at that point, you will be seeing more videos and content, but around January, February is going to be kind of a little break of stuff because, like, I'll be busy working on production. Aside from that, if you're wondering, yes, Goblin Productions about Trials of the Dark Side. The thing is, we're kind of producing it, but the reins are over for a different director named Joshua Patello, who's a good friend of mine. He's directing the project, and he's taking a lot of time on it because he wants to make it look nice and everything and presentable. So we're honestly not sure when that's going to happen, but it should be coming as soon as possible or whenever he gets it finished. All right, so let's start this Q&A. So if you guys want to know, this is just basically questions about the making of my remake of Kong from 2016. So if you guys have any questions about the production, and I'll tell you a couple stories about what happened during the making of it. So without further ado, let's get started on the first few questions. How did you do the Empire State Building battle? It's interesting because that was one of the first things I essentially storyboarded when I worked on the film. I wrote the script in a month and had finished it around the end of September. And I immediately started doing basically storyboards for the whole sequence. And essentially, I just added a lot of stuff. And the way we shot it was for the live action segments, Anna Boonstra, who plays Ann Darrow, we had her mostly on green screen, but the location of kind of the roof area of the building, kind of the balcony area, we actually shot at my sister's apartment building, which is down in the city of Toronto. So we used that to our advantage, and we basically filmed the whole segment there. Also, I'll probably link it down below later after this live stream, but if you guys go to Brad Dunn's channel, Studio 95, you guys can see a lot of the production diaries and a lot of the behind-the-scenes videos of what went on during the production. And you can check out his videos there at Studio 95 or under Bradley Dunn. So in terms of the live segments, we shot on green screen in my sister's apartment. And then when we shot Kong himself, it's funny, the original idea of how we were going to film it was going to be kind of how they did the Kong skit in Jackass #2. Now, if you guys have not seen those movies are fucking hilarious, but essentially what happens is that they got Preston Lacey, the big fat guy on the show, and they put him in, black paint, and they put, like, fur and everything on him, and they had Wee Man as Fay Ray, and they basically stuck him on the top of a hill with a porta potty and had, like, radio-controlled airplanes flying around at him and everything. It was a very funny skit that was cut out of Jackass #2. But we were planning to do kind of the same thing, just on the top of a large hill. We were going to make the cone of the building, and we were going to have radio-controlled helicopters fly around and shoot at them. Unfortunately, it was a little too over-ambitious, and we had no way of filming that. A simpler approach. Once again, we used green screen, and we had our actor as calling Bradley Dunn a little table, and we had built this the communication mast out of like a big kind of broom pole, and stuck some like potato or tomato wire mesh that you plant your potatoes on around it, and we used that as the mast of the building. And for the helicopters, we mostly used, just basically toy helicopters on fishing lines. We had people on like ladders on the fishing lines that would just fly them around and everything. Some of it didn't work too well, and you can see some of the stuff in some of the toy helicopters in the shot. But the majority of it, I used a lot of stock CGI helicopters off YouTube. The trick as well. So. A lot of that whole Empire State Building battle was just done with very basic techniques and very easy to do kind of special effects. So that's how we did the Empire State Building. So let's see here. Let's see what other questions we have here. I never released any more chapters of the novelization. I just have not had time for that, man. But it's in the works. It is in the works to get a lot of that. That novelization done, because I have more to expand the story on, but unfortunately I haven't had time right now to do that. Did you mix elements of the 1996 film and The Legend of King Kong to make your film? Yes, actually. My original intention was just to shoot the 96 draft, essentially, but I figured I wanted to tell the story of Kong, but more in a present-day setting, kind of like the 1976 film. So what I did was I basically took elements from that 96 draft, most notably a lot of the stuff on Skull Island, and stuck it into my film. At that point, I had also found a copy of the Legend of King Kong script, and had read the whole, a lot of stuff from that. So I used a bit of that, a few of those elements in the script as well. And I basically pumped that script out in about a month, and I was surprised because nowadays scripts take me a little longer than that to put together. But yeah, there was a lot of those two films that were never made put into this film. Did you use the Kong plushie in the back for some scenes? Yes, we did actually. Hang on, I'm just gonna grab this sucker so you guys can have a close look at it. This is a King Kong plushie from the King Kong encounter that used to be at Universal Studios Hollywood back from 1986 till 2008 till it burned in the fire. But this was one of the souvenir Kongs that they had back in the 80s, and essentially what it is has a zipper in the back, and you put like batteries in it and make sounds like in the ride. It's got a little heart that says, it's so cute. But I bought, basically I did buy this guy for cheap on eBay for about 20 bucks. These guys usually range about 100. But basically, yeah, we had used this for a couple of shots in the film. And it was mostly shots mostly with Kong falling, mostly like as a dummy almost. We basically had it where he bangs into the side of the building and lets go a van. That was this figure. And we also used it for wide shots where it was falling. And the way I did that was I just attached him to a fishing line down onto the green screen to give it that kind of heavy effect that he was falling. But yeah, this guy was definitely used in a few shots. So I'm just going to place him right here. And he's probably just going to chill there. Yeah, and he's just probably going to chill there for the rest of the video. So yeah, that's how we did the Kong plushie for his fall in the Empire State Building. Let's see here. Hey Jack, I want to say a big King Kong fan personally. I'm inspired by the 2005 version. One day I'm going to follow in your footsteps and make your own Kong film. I will say this, this is kind of a question, but it's more of a comment. I think one of the biggest compliments I've gotten about this film is basically inspiration. A lot of people have now been inspired to do kind of their own versions because of the efforts that were put into my film. So that's one of the things I'm totally grateful my remake is just the fact that it's now inspired people to make their own Kong films. And that's pretty much what the original Kong and all the Kong films are all about. It's about inspiration in the realm of filmmaking, and that's why I love it so much, because it just, to quote James Rolfe, it sparks fantasy and imagination, and that's what movies are all about. So I tip my hat off to you, TJP123. I will look forward to see what you have in going for your remake. Let's see. All right, Brian Gonzalez asks, where did you find the Kong suit for the movie? I had to order those online, actually. The Kong suit was basically built out of several pieces from the film for the film, several pieces of gorilla costumes. I had originally bought in a gorilla suit long ago, like maybe about 10, 11 years ago for myself. Wanted to like work in an ape suit and everything. And at the time, back in 2007, 2008, I had thought about doing a remake of Kong back then, and basically having a guy in a suit and everything. But the way we were going to do the effects was doing it the old way with rear screen projection. So I'd shot these like really rough tests on my Lego Studios camera, and even using me in the ape suit. And a lot of it was shot at my grandma's house and everything, just to give a concept of kind of the visuals of what I was going for. And we were going to use rear screen projection for that. And unfortunately, that remake didn't fall through 10 years ago. When 2010 hit, I realized I had the technology to do that. But back on the subject of the suits. So that was one of the suits we used. And then I had bought in 2 other gorilla suits offline for about $200, and basically had them as kind of backups and spares and everything. And we modified the shit out of them because Bradley, he had to wear this thing, but in the back it wouldn't fit all the way, so we had to like put an extra like shoelace behind it to tighten it up so he could fit in the suit. And we had also had a spare kind of black fur women's jacket that we basically put and zipped up so he could have something in the back so that his back wouldn't be so noticeable with the not fishing line shoelaces that tighten the suit up. The feet were just regular gorilla feet, and we essentially just we got a bunch of old shoes, and we just like put the 8 feet on top of it, so that way there'd be more sturdy movement for the actor to feel more comfortable in the 8 shoes. We had gorilla gloves, obviously, that were part of the costume. And this is the best part. We had actually made arm extensions for the ape suit because I wanted at some point to have Kong on all 4s. And the way we did that was that we got these big, thick cardboard tubes. And I essentially just stuck gorilla fur that I bought off at Walmart on the cardboard tubes, and the actor could just slip his whole arm through it and have it be on all 4s and everything. Now, in terms of the fist gloves, those were just Kong 2005 gloves that were made as part of the toy line that, you know, kids could just put these fist gloves on. They would make sound effects and everything. But I just used them and placed them on the cardboard tube, and they worked wonders to make a cheap fist kind of, when the apes are kind of when gorillas are kind of cuffed down with their hands like this. So it really helped create that kind of illusion that he was on all 4s. Because we had about 5 or 6 masks for Kong. The main one we used, which is a mechanical mask that I bought at a Spirit Halloween store for about $50, which allowed you to, like, when you moved your jaw, the mouth would move and the lips would snarl and everything. And I had modified that with some black fabric behind it so that you wouldn't see the actor's mouth. Brad had to wear black paint around his eyes and everything, and just to hide the fact that he was, you know, was a guy in a suit. But we had a mechanical mask, and then we had a couple of regular basic masks, which were more for like wide shots and everything in case we didn't need the mechanical mask. And then we had stunt masks, which were for, you know, falls or anything, so that way we wouldn't damage the main masks. And then we had a few spares just in case anything went wrong. And that was the majority of how we built the ape suit for Kong, and what ultimately went into that. So that's how we built the suit. All right, let's see here. The questions. Ever since I watched your movie, I always wanted to make a remake since that movie. Well, Mon King, go for it, man. Even like use either whatever you have, or you plan a budget and everything. I mean, it took me 6 years to make mine, but I figured if I can do that, anything's possible. And there were several times that we were thinking about quitting, but I just never gave up this production. So, yeah, I'd say if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything, as Marty McFly would say. if you did a remake of King Kong, can I join in the movie? Like if I did a sequel or something, possibly, Bob. I'm not too sure. One of the questions I've always gotten is if I'm ever going to do a sequel to my film, and I think the answer is no, because I think one is enough, honestly. And and if anything, if I am going to write a sequel, it's going to be kind of a story, like a fan fiction story or something. It's not going to be a full-fledged movie, and I also don't think the cast would be up to doing a sequel in general. So in terms of a sequel, probably not, but in story-wise, maybe sometime down the road. But yeah, this is so far a lot of questions here about the film. And again, leave some comments and stuff of anything you want to know about the production. I am more than welcome to entertain you guys and tell you some stories. But yes, it's oh, and here's something interesting. I will point this out. My dad had found these at in his like desk and everything, and he found basically these kind of like lighting gels. And I'm thinking at some point down the road, I'm gonna probably use these for my camera because, say, like put the lens right there, it looks a lot more blue, right? Well, there's a lot of these different colors. There's like blue, red, green, and everything. And I'm gonna probably stick these on the camera in case I want to do color timing on anything. But yeah, while we're waiting there, we'll just have these here. But yeah, they make for a good lighting effect, in my opinion. When you become a film director, do you plan on remastering your film or make the 1996 film? In answer to the first part of that question, we're actually doing a remaster right now. I'm currently on the 8th reel, fixing up the film, tightening it down, fixing up some of the effects and color compositings. And I have my buddy Bernard Kier, who is now doing the score for me. He just sent me a couple of samples, and the score sounds fantastic. And if you guys don't know, Bernard Kier is a wonderful composer. He did the score for the fan film Jurassic Park Prime Survival, which you can check out on YouTube. And he reached out to me and asked me if he was interested in doing the score for me. And I said, yeah, sure. So he's been sending me a lot of samples and everything. So in terms of the remaster of the film, we're hoping to have it out by March during the whole 85 years of Kong celebration by that point. Yeah, there's going to be a remaster of the film. And to answer the second question, I have always thought about actually doing the 1996 film as some sort of like visual interpretation of it. Would I do a film of it? Enough money, and if I'm a big filmmaker, probably I would do that. If not, I would probably do it in Legos, because that's something I've wanted to do, is another Lego Kong movie, but base it on the 96 script at some point. So that's essentially what I would do. Of your film on how Kong became king or about the characters? Honestly, no prequels. Prequels very rarely work. And if you're wondering about all the Kong prequel comics, I've not read one of them, so I have no interest really. I wouldn't probably read them, but I probably wouldn't do a prequel for my own. But anyway, so yeah, I just want to kind of keep it to where it's this film essential questions. So if you have any other questions about other stuff on this channel, I'll probably answer them in another live stream sometime down the road. But let's try to keep it to questions about the film, itself. So maybe I could just probably start off by just saying, like, when I wrote this, how the inspiration came to do. Beforehand, I had always done remakes of Kong before. I had always wanted to try to do a really good remake on my own terms. I tried Legos about 3 times, and it was just kind of eh. And I tried it a few other ways, and it didn't really work. And it's mostly because at the time, like in my early days of YouTube, the reason I never got around to it was because I just didn't have the camera and technology to do a proper remake. I was using a crappy Lego camera from like 2007 to like 2010. And I was using a Windows XP computer, so how the hell could I pull it off? And I was also in high school at the time. Around August 2010, I went to visit Hollywood, California, which was something I dreamed about doing, and I finally got to do. And at the time, I had also just bought a brand new video camera, which was a 720p Sony Handycam, and I was really loving the shit out of it because you could just film it and you could instantly get the footage onto your computer. It was fantastic. And basically, when I went on the Hollywood backlot tour, I was just so amazed, like, yes, this is why I love the studio, because it inspired me to make films and everything. And I got to experience King Kong 360 3D. And realizing that still at that point, the Kong franchise, or Kong as a phenomenon, was still popular, I figured, you know what? I think with my camera and my laptop, I could probably do a remake of Kong at a very low budget and give the same results as they would do in 1976. So I began writing the script when I just got back to my last senior year in high school. Writing the script, got it done in a month, and then I started storyboarding and doing concept art and everything. And eventually, around, I think it was January or December, I started casting the film, and I mostly grabbed a couple of my high school friends to be in the movie. And we did production from May of 2011 till October 2013, took a year off, did the effects in 2015, and then finished the film in 2016. So that's kind of how it all went down in terms of the short version. But if you have any other questions about the film, I'm glad to answer them for you. Funny, because I like to use the unmade Godzilla 94 script for my fan film. That's the thing, Ziller Universe. That's something I like to see a lot of people do, is take scripts that from films that nobody's done and kind of canceled, and then just like make the film, because there's some canceled projects that, man, I would love to see as a visual interpretation of. Did you play as Carl Denham, or did you have a cameo in the film? I did have a couple cameos in the film. I did the kind of Alfred Hitchcock formula. If we needed an extra body and there was nobody there, I would fill in the shoes of certain actors. Say if one of the actors couldn't make it, I would fill in the role for a little bit, mostly like sailors and stuff. Main characters, I did not fill in. That was mostly the main cast members, but extras and everything I would normally fill in as a cameo. But interesting enough, I could mention a few cameos that are in the film while we're at it. There's a couple of cameos from certain people that you'll mostly notice in the beginning of or the end of the film, when Kong's on his rampage through New York, and in the Broadway film, or the Broadway scene. And one of the first ones you will notice right away is when Denham walks out on stage and you have the announcer going, "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Carl Denham." That is James Rolfe of Cinemassacre.com, the Angry Video Game Nerd. I saw him at a convention, and I just had a lot of conversations about Kong with him and everything, and that's how we kind of met. And I'd ask him, just for the hell of it, do you mind doing a cameo for this film I'm working on? He said, yeah, sure. So I just told him it's an audio cameo right there on the spot in the dealer's room, and I got that, and I stuck that in the movie. Another cameo you'll notice is Doug Walker and the cast of Channel Awesome, who mostly do a lot of ADR stuff, ADR kind of cameos. They did a lot of the voices of the paparazzi asking questions about stuff, and they were kind enough to do that. Cameo you'll notice very briefly is, believe it or not, Jennifer Aniston. It's funny how that came along. You'll see her very quickly in the premiere when they're on the red carpet for the premiere of Kong. Most people think that was stock footage, but no, what happened was I was at the Toronto International Film Festival, and I mostly wait in line to see some of the celebrities and some of the premieres and everything at the TIFF, Toronto International Film Festival. And Jennifer Aniston was at one of them, and so I just got, she was just walking down the red carpet. I had my camera in handy, and I'm like, I'll stick that in the film somehow, and then it'll probably be like a little Easter egg. So that's another cameo you'll notice. And one of the other cameos you'll see in the film is when Kong breaks through the Broadway theater and is attacking Times Square. One of the cameos is Bernard Keir, who scored the film. He does some stuff at Universal Studios Florida, and I went to visit him and just kind of talked to him and have lunch and everything. That was the first time I met him. And I had asked him if he wanted a cameo. So we filmed that on the Universal backlot. perk section, and it was right next to Confrontation, how appropriate, and we basically filmed that. So that's most of the cameos that you see in the Kong film. If you're ever noticing stuff like that. Monster movies, if so, mind I give you or help you out with them? I've got a few ideas. I don't have any plans to do really anything giant monster related at the moment. I know right now I'm mostly focused on my reviews. Projects I want to do is an Inuyasha project, which involves a lot of creatures and everything that I want to do certain ways and effects. But that'll be sometime down the road. TJP123 asks, if you had the opportunity, would you do what they did with 2005 and use models and CGI? I would do what they did in Mighty Joe Young, where I would only use CGI for the most difficult shots, like the best kind of effects or practical effects. So like men in suits, giant mechanical hands, life-size stuff about, with creatures and so on. But most of the time, I do use CGI very sparingly. I wouldn't want to use it a lot or abuse the shit out of it. Is mostly what I would do with that kind of technology. But if anything, I'm more of a practical effects guy in terms of making films. I like to use puppets. I like to use stop motion. I like to use mechanical effects. And so on. I just think there's more realism to that rather than using CGI and so on. All right, Mode King asked, what was the hardest part about making the film? I think it was just trying to organize everybody to come in for the days we needed. I think the production, honestly, was the biggest hellbreaker in making this film. Just trying to get because everybody came in on weekends, and it was just trying to organize for everybody to come in. And it was also relying on filming stuff when actors weren't there. Like, there would be times where actors wouldn't show up, and we'd have to shoot around it. The difficulty, honestly, was finding an actress to play Anne, which honestly was a bitch to find, no pun intended. And we had literally gone 2 years without an actress, and much like Spielberg did with Jaws, we shot around Anne's scenes, and we filmed everything aside from Anne. And once 2013 rolled around, people started getting impatient, like, when are we going to finish this movie? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do whatever I can to cast this movie for Anne, because we had one actress early on, but then she bailed, and then we tried a couple other people, and they didn't work out. So at the last-ditch effort, I put out a Kijiji ad, and a couple people answered, and I got one of them, Lana, and she was incredibly generous to come in and, like, do this film for us. And it's funny how we met, because we met at kind of a breakfast diner called Tim Hortons, and I did my interview with her. And it was almost symbolic to when Denham met Anne in the original and trying to get her to be in the film. So it's kind of like, again, it's kind of like symbolism or poetry. It rhymes itself. Like, this is an instance where fiction becomes reality, and I thought that was kind of interesting. So she came in and filmed for a whole year with us on the production. And we eventually got principal photography done in October of 2013. And that probably some of the most difficult stuff was just organizing people in terms of getting actors on board and everything. All right. TJPA123 asks another question. What would you do film for the King Kong reviews? Yes, that will be part of season 4. To me basically ripping into my own film, and that will be something to behold. I will be basically doing it as my character and not essentially myself. But I will be honestly giving my film an honest review. I will not be like, oh, I like it because it's my film, or, like, I won't be self-centered about it. But you will see a review on that down the road. In your Kong film, how did you do the stop motion? Very simple, Bob. That is a good question. Basically, the stop motion dinosaurs idea how to build puppets using, ball and socket joints and foam and latex and everything. I didn't have that kind of quality or technology at my disposal. So instead, I had basically built all the puppets out of wire, chicken wire, and plasticine. armatures, obviously, and then I sculpted the character out of plasticine clay, and most of the dinosaurs you see are claymation dinosaurs. Uh, there were some added details to some of them, like, for example, the Triceratops, in terms of his horns, the big bull horns that he has, those are just chicken bones that I just basically cleaned and everything and just stuck them onto the horns. And a lot of the spikes you see on the dinosaurs, most of that is, you know, little toothpick edges that I just stuck on the spine of the characters. And then there was some other stuff. There was a Brontosaurus and all kinds of creatures we had added. And the way I did stop motion was kind of the same way I did my old Lego Studios films, because the editing software I use for my films and videos is Pinnacle. And Pinnacle is done by the same company who created Lego Studios. And one of the features they have is a capture feature where you can do live video or stop motion. So what I did was I basically used my laptop for the stop motion, and I would film it in my garage downstairs and have a green screen and a tabletop to do all the animation on. And all I would do is take, for example, like this. This is a Pinnacle screen capture device that you connect to your computer. And I connected the camera to this, and it would feed to the computer monitor on the laptop, and eventually I would just start animating it and doing the stop motion on my computer. And it helped a lot because I was able to do playback and everything. So a lot of the stop motion was done with my editing software and claymation dinosaurs, and then just composited with the green screen. And that took a while to put all that together too. A lot of the shots took forever to basically put together on film. Amazing. I do like their donuts. That's the only reason why I go. I'm not one for coffee. What would you say is the best scene you did? In my opinion, the best scene that I think I really felt like I accomplished something was the waterfall scene, because that was one of the first scenes I kind of put together in the compositing and everything, and it looked great. But every time I was down on my luck on this film, every time I would, like, you know, feel like I don't know if this is working or not, I would go to that scene, and it just looks so visually stunning to me that I'm like, you know, it kept me going. That one scene kept me going in terms of wanting to continue making this film. So every time I went back in, I would keep watching that film and just be like amazed that I was able to accomplish such great effects in those shots. I'm like, you know what? I can do this. I can make this film and make it work. So that was probably my favorite scene that I accomplished in the film, was the waterfall scene. Let's see here. Trailer of your film remastered before posting it. Probably no remastered trailer. If anything, I'm just gonna re-release the older trailers monthly prior to its release. So you've seen the teaser trailer on my channel, and if not, there's gonna be one in January, and then there's gonna be one in February. But I'm probably not gonna release trailers for the film at that point. I'm just gonna basically do my own. Okay, Jared has a quick off question, so I'm just going to answer it for him. What are your thoughts on the crossover between Inuyasha and the Universal Monsters? It'd be interesting, but it's only for me a pitch right now, so I have no clue. Next, a few questions. Let's see what other questions do people have about the film. In the meantime, I could probably just stop the film at the moment. I know at some point down the road, I still have a few more animatics that I'm doing. Those will come out sometime down the road. There's a few animatics that I still have to do. The Empire State Building, the log, and so on. Those will come out down the line. Ethan Doyle asks, do you have a script for your fan film? I do, and I don't know if I've published it yet, but if I haven't, I probably will sometime down the road if you want to read it. If you guys want to read some of the early drafts, I can probably do that. There are basically a total of 3 drafts of the film. The first draft I actually did in 2008, and it was more of an abridged comedy. And I have that script floating around somewhere. And but the first draft was, I think, about 250 pages, and it had a lot of filler in it. And eventually, sometime down the production, I started to realize there was too much in the film, so I eventually had to trim down half of it, and that eventually became the third draft of the film. And so there's about 3 drafts floating around somewhere. Let's see. Are you okay with your decision to kill Denham off in the film? I was actually okay with that because I always saw Denham in my interpretation as a villain. I know a lot of people really... I heard a lot of people coming at me saying, like, oh, you made Denham a villain. Why'd you do that? He's more of a heroic, person, a tough as nails, big game hunter and adventurer. I know a lot of people like that version of Carl Denham from the original, me included. I love that version. But for me, I wanted to go the route of what Charles Grodin was in the 1976 film, and also in the 1996 draft, because if you go look at that draft, for the villain, they were going for somebody on par with, like, Gary Oldman or Robert De Niro in the role of Carl Denham. And in that sense, I wanted that kind of Robert De Niro-esque feel to him, and therefore I made him more of a villain. So, but the way I wanted to kill him off, because in the 1996 draft, he was just stepped on by Kong after doing some shit with Anne, and it wasn't really satisfying for me. I figured he'd go out in some way like a Disney villain where he falls to his death. So what I did was I kind of stretched it out a bit more, where Denham, realizing that his career was essentially fucked, he decided, okay, I'm going to take Anne and use her as a hostage and try to get my way out of the country. So when they go up to the Empire State Building and everything, when he realizes his career's done, he basically says, fuck it, if I'm done, I'm going to go out with a bang and have some fun. And there was a lot more cut out of the scene with him and Anne in the room in the Empire State Building. There was actually a lot more of an assault on Anne, if you will, when we shot it and filmed it. And during the editing, I was very uncomfortable with it, so I really trimmed that down entirely and just got it to where he went cuckoo and he slapped her. But I feel like his death was very well deserved. And it's funny you mention that, by the way, about killing Denham. We premiered the film. I showed it to early on. When Denham basically pushes Herb aside and Herb gets eaten, and Denham filmed his death and then said, well, that's a wrap. Let's head back to the ship. It's where I heard everybody in the theater and the people I showed it to be like, oh, you dick! And so at that point, it was kind of unintentional. You feel like this character was going to die in the log scene and in the scene where he goes on the rampage, where Kong goes on the rampage in the village. A lot of people were thinking, like, oh, please die, please die. And every time he does it, they're like, fuck! Everybody was just so upset of why this fucker would not die. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm pulling the audience's string, and I love that you think this character's going to die when he does it. We were in the theater, and Denham was in Kong's hands, and Kong threw him off the building, and he fell to his death. The audience applauded, and it was like, I could not believe it, because everybody was just applauding and cheering, like, yes, the fucker's dead, hooray. And I was like, okay, if I am able to take the audience and make them root for a character to die, then my work here is done. So I was overall perfectly fine with Denham dying at the end. I felt like that was really deserved. And I felt that was one of the biggest accomplishments in the film, is that the audience really wanted this character to die. And it's funny, because afterwards I had told Jake about it. And Jake was at the theater with us, too, for the premiere. He was laughing, and he was just saying, dude, he really loved the fact that he got to play a villain. And I told him that, dude, people love your character. And he's like, they say you're the best character. And he's like, yes, I did it, right? Which was great. So bless Jake and all his performance on the role of Carl Denham. I think he did a phenomenal job. All right. Ethan asks, do you have an animatic for the sacrifice scene? Believe it or not, no, we did not storyboard that. All we really had was concept art. And a lot of it was a lot more ambitious than what I thought. Because one of the ideas I had is, much like the Peter Jackson film, where there'd be like a thing of lava that splits the wall on the island apart. One of the things I thought of was that the natives for every sacrifice would place basically a huge wall of sticks and limbs around the wall. and using the oil would light it on fire to protect the wall from Kong in case he decided to go on a rampage. And you see that in the concept art. That was too ambitious, and I didn't end up doing that. But we cinematics or storyboards for the sacrifice scene, and really we played it from just looking at footage from some of the other films and basically copy pasting that beat for beat. And that's essentially how that sacrifice scene came together. Being asked, did you sometimes forget what you were shooting? Absolutely. There were several times where we would forget a couple shots, and then afterwards we'd be like, fuck, we forgot that shot. Okay, the next time we would pull them in and do that shot, but the continuity bit would be different. One of the things you'll definitely notice in the film, Charles, who plays Jack Driscoll, always change. And that's because most of the time, either A, like, he would come in with a full kind of hairdo, and then the following weekend he'd have his hair completely cut, and we'd realize, fuck, the continuity is going to be terrible. And then there were times he wouldn't even shave, and we said, dude, you have to shave. And he'd be like, or you have to get your hair trimmed. He'd be like, no. In the swamp scene, for example, is where it got the most ridiculous, because when we were shooting the swamp scene, in the actual swamp, by the way, he had a hairdo like Weird Al Yankovic, and we're like, great, Weird Al Yankovic's on the set. And we were all singing the Jurassic Park theme that Weird Al did, you know, Jurassic Park is frightening in the dark. We were all singing that when he had that massive hairdo. But yeah, eventually, but that was one of the biggest continuities we had. And in terms of missing shots, we definitely had a couple of those. We would sometimes even abandon shots because they were just too difficult to pull off. So there was a lot of that when you're making a film. You go in with basically sticking to the script, sticking to what you had planned, but sometimes you got to make sacrifices in the middle of production. You have to white knuckle, you have to shoot what you absolutely need, you have to cut stuff in case you don't need it, and it's because the script is like a blueprint. It's not the finished product. You got to essentially basically break down to what's most important to the film. And there was basically, that's kind of how it went down in terms of forgetting shots and everything. What was the film in the movie? You mean Carl Denham's film? It's interesting because we were just kind of going what they did in the original, where he's just going to film something that nobody's ever seen before. But one of the character traits with Denham is that in terms of finding this island, I feel like he was just going there to find something that would be visually stunning, because he knows that all the studios are like, why don't you just green screen it? Why don't you just like miniaturize it? And he's like, no, I want the real goddamn thing in front of the audience. So one of the things he was a very enthusiastic director as a character. So a lot of the time he was just making jokes like, wow, we found a real special effects world. We don't have to add anything or anything. And I think he was making it up as he goes. He was kind of like the natural drama to the modern age, because the natural drama had died out mostly around the 1970s. Natural dramas had died out, and he was one. I felt like in the backstory of Carl Denham, he had brought back genre both in film and television. And you got to remember too that this film was the script was written at the time of the recession a few years ago, so there was still a lot of that going on. And I had basically wrote that kind of into the script. In the first draft, there's a lot of stuff cut out that explains more of characters and what's going on in the world. But in terms of the film that's in the film that Denham's making, he's just making a natural drama, and that's what I think ultimately what he was trying to do. All right, this question again comes from TJP123. Ever think your film could be in a film festival? I actually do want to at some point down the road premiere it at a couple places. Most notably G-Fest. I know in July I do want to try to make a trip down to G-Fest, which is a big Godzilla convention, and I want to screen the film down there. But it's unclear when I can get it going. But I do want to screen it at a couple film festivals, mostly to film the audience reaction to certain scenes. I think that would be something really fun to do. If you ever make a sequel, what would the story be? We already answered this question. I would probably never do a sequel, but if I am going to do the story-wise, I would have it kind of like The Lost World, Jurassic Park, where maybe at this point the government, now knowing of Skull Island's whereabouts, decides to send an expedition in to see what else is out there on the island. And in doing so, they bring Jack Driscoll along, who's like kind of he tried to settle down with Anne, but eventually they broke up because Anne was dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder due to the events of the film. And I have the idea where, like, you know, they split off because, you know, both come from different worlds and they never could really understand each other. So while Anne's dealing with PTSD and a lot of people are trying to get to her, she's like, no, fuck off. I'm not dealing with that. She kind of goes to Jack for help and everything. And Jack tells her, I'm going back to the island. If I don't come back, you know, whatever. And I always imagine Jack is kind of like Sam Neill in Jurassic Park 3, where he's kind of not wanting to go back, but the government kind of has to get him there because they need somebody who's been on the island before. That would be one of the storylines. I would love to bring Bob back as kind of a villain role, taking over from Denham, and kind of like more explaining him and Jack's rivalry. Because the idea for Bob's character is that he's the son of the owner of Englehorn Corp, which is the company that goes into the island, and that maybe like he was thinking his father was like giving him a ship, but it turns out Jack's the one in command, so that kind of makes him a little jealous. So bring that kind of dynamic into the story. Would probably bring in maybe the son of Denham. I wouldn't be too sure, but I would just want it to be more of a kind of just a classic jungle adventure as before, and basically make it kind of like the Lost World. Maybe add a few new dinosaurs and creatures, or like Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, where it's like the island's about to sink, and that would be the end of the sequels. It would just be one. The sequels, that would be kind of what I would want to do. Questions do we have? Oh, shit, we got like a bunch of them now. Holy crap. A bunch of them just came by. Hang on. Holy crap, there's a lot of questions here. You or your version of... What do you or your version of Kong as a character? Can you rephrase that question, TJP123, because it's kind of hard to understand. Of Kong, if that's what you're wondering. I'll answer that while I'm at it. The character of Kong was something I thought about for a while. I really wanted to see that vicious, brutal beast and not sympathize with him until the end of the film. But as time went on, I wanted to give him more character. The basic idea I have for Kong is that a gorilla who is very unsocial and is like, again, the last of his species, but he's also kind of, I guess, kind of has more of a, I kind of picture him as like a gorilla with Down syndrome, and not in a mean way, but more in terms of just like, you know, how does like a creature that kind of intelligence handle like a female companion or whatever. And that was something I brought into the script, but it was more going for the Beauty and the Beast storyline in the film, and trying to make that, you know, the dynamic of the story. So the character of Kong was just basically, I wanted to be very ugly. I wanted him to be very deformed and just kind of, he's not a natural gorilla, more sympathetic, because the more ugly he looks, the more scary he looks, and then at the end, the more sympathetic. So in terms of the character of Kong, that's kind of what I was going for. What other questions do we have here? Let's see. Did you originally plan having Jack and Carl having another fight before Kong went on a rampage? No, I just kind of figured like they had their fight in the swamp, and once Denham got Kong back to Skull Island, or back to New York, I figured Jack would just be like, you know, just going along with the ride because Denham basically paid him. And, you know, made it about money and everything. So I figured Jack was just taking the money and getting it done and over with. But I never figured they would get into another fight, essentially. That's kind of what I was going for. I want to make a movie on the Lost World. Besides, if you release your Kong film on DVD, which you do in the UK, there are plans to have it on DVD and maybe Blu-ray. But I want to get a lot of the behind the scenes and bonus material done in terms of like releasing it. I don't know exactly when the DVD will be out, but I'm going to see if I can get it shipped and everything. If anything, if people want a DVD, they'll have to PM me, and I'll have to get them a mail address and everything, and I'll probably charge a little bit of money for it because I do want to. Because think about it, I only have so many blank DVDs to make copies of, but I think at some point I will do that. I will make DVDs for the film. Okay, we're gonna probably end this Q&A soon. I'm probably going to answer about 3 more questions, right? Because I have to get back to remastering and I have to get back onto the season finale and, plan some more shots and everything. So basically, give me 3 more questions about the film and I will answer them for you. The Oscar. Let's try to keep it on topic with the film. Let's try to keep it on topic. But in terms of the Oscar nominations, I don't care. I really don't care about the Oscars. The only thing I give a shit about is that Kong Skull Island at least get a visual effects nominee. Is all I want. All right, Ethan Doyle asks, in the ending of your film based on the ending of the 1976 film and Jack being together, in terms of the ending being kind of like 1976? Sort of, I guess. I was more going with just, I was just more going on terms of, like, making an ending that would be really sympathetic. I did want Jack and Anne to end up together at the end because that was one of my issues with Kong 76. But it was just more showing Kong's final breaths of life was to save Anne as she was falling to her death, showing that he really cared about her. He really loved her and defended her to the death. And then it's only then that Anne realizes, holy shit, this guy did so, like, he actually genuinely loved me. And that's what causes her to break down and everything. On par with a bit of Kong 76 mixed with the 1996 script, because at the end of the 1996 script, an old lady comes in and says it was Beauty Killed the Beast. And the idea was, back then for Jackson, that they wanted Fay Wray to have a cameo. She passed away before they could do that. So I wanted to kind of pay tribute to that idea. And one of the things I actually thought of was I wanted to do the whole old lady kind of like a Fay Wray role for the ending of this film. And I had 2 ideas for cameos for the film that I wanted to, like, 2 actresses that I wanted to say that line. Film. One of them was the 2 I wanted were Susan Roman and I can't remember her name, and I'm so sorry if I forget her name. But Susan Roman, you guys will probably know as the voice of Sailor Jupiter in the original dub of Sailor Moon. And Julia or whatever, I can't remember her name, and I'm gonna sound like an asshole for not remembering her name. But she's also but there's one actress who was the voice of Luna from Sailor Moon as well. I've gotten to know them at a couple of cons and everything, and I asked them if they wanted to do a cameo. Unfortunately, they couldn't because they were under the Canadian Screen Actors Guild and therefore couldn't, for some reason, do that cameo. So I was kind of shocked, actually, because in 2016, we were in the middle of post-production doing compositing and sound mixing, and we still hadn't had that last shot. So thankfully, we had some neighbors next door, and one of them was this grandmother asked the kind of the 11th hour, is like, do you want to do this? And she said, yeah, sure. And it turns out she does a lot of stage acting. So she came in, we shot this on a green screen. It was August, and it was the last shot we did in the film, and how appropriate. Shot done, and yeah, so that was kind of how we did the ending to the film, to that idea that the Fay Wray cameo at the end, even though it wasn't Fay Wray. And 2 more questions, and then we're going to call it a night. Let's see here. Is your Kong supposed to look like the 1976 Kong? Yeah, we were kind of going for that style, more on par with a mix of that and Rick Baker's Mighty Joe Young, with him being on a couple forearms a couple times and everything. All right, let's see here. Okay, so we're one more question. Charlie Theander asks, were the first drafts of your film really different from the final film, or was there not much of a difference? Pretty much the same. The only thing is, in mostly the second draft, it was padded as fuck. There was a lot of backstory to a lot of characters. There was a lot of bits of storyline and visual concepts and kind of ideas for dinosaur sequences that I had in mind that never I felt were too overambitious. And I did feel the film and the script itself was way too long. So around halfway through production, I ended up rewriting the script, and it eventually became a lot more of a simpler story and shortening down scenes and everything. But in terms of a lot of stuff that was cut out, not really much that affected the story. A lot of it was mostly padding and filler. If I'd film it as it was in that second draft, this movie would have been 5 to 6 hours long. It would have been a mini-series. So I didn't bother really shooting certain stuff. However, if you guys go to my channel, you can check out the deleted scenes of the film and see what was cut out, essentially. So that's it for this Q&A, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of 1 year later anniversary of my fan film. If you guys want to check out the fan film, for those who haven't seen it, links in the description below. You can also check out our deleted scenes or blooper reels. And I think at some point we are going to be doing behind-the-scenes documentary on the making of the film. We're currently filming a lot of the actors, doing interviews and everything. And we hope to get it done pretty soon. I'm not too sure when, probably around sometime next year. But yeah, there's a lot to look forward on the channel. There's a lot to look forward to in terms of the remaster of the film that you will see on this channel in around March, I think. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. So as always, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. This is BigJackFilms, signing off.